Hi there, I'm Zach.
And I'm Amanda.
And today we're going to show you the installation of your faux brick panels here from GenStone. After you receive your boxes, you want to do two things. Number one, you want to take everything out of the boxes and take an inventory within 7 days of receiving your order. This allows you to, number one, make sure that you got all of your material, and number two, check if anything was damaged in shipping. We will replace it at no cost to you.
Another thing you want to make sure you do as soon as you get your materials, you want to let it acclimate for about 2 to 4 days, and we typically recommend waiting for days of consecutive temperature.
Let's start unboxing.
Note when doing the unboxing is to make sure that you unpack everything from the boxes. Typically the caulking and paint will be included at the bottom of a box with panels. Like this box here had corners in it, but it also includes our caulking. Now that we've unpacked all of our material, we just wanted to quickly show you some of the different pieces that we offer for the brick. The main piece we're going to be using today is our full brick panel. We also offer a half brick panel, which is just half the height. We've got our outside corners here. We have our ledger piece here and our outside corner ledgers. We do also offer inside corner ledgers and inside corner pieces if your corner faces the opposite direction. And we also offer trim.
If you ordered through our website or with the project coordinator here at corporate, you will have received a post-purchase guide to your email. In there, you'll find an installation guide that has all of this material that you'll need for your install in one nice place for you to view it. We've got our caulking, our paint, and our exact color match. We've got a hand saw. We also have a table saw set up outside, but obviously can't fit it in this room. We've got a chalk line for leveling, tape measure. We have our drywall screws. These are going to be used for interior projects. Our level here, a drill, our personal protective equipment, and then I wanted to touch on this real quick. We have our decking screws and our Loctite PL3X. That is actually only going to be used for exterior projects. We'll get into it a little bit more later, but essentially if you're doing an exterior project, you're going to use this on the back of your panels, but you will not for interior projects.
So we understand it can be a little intimidating getting started on your project for the first time. We have several resources here to help. We've got install guides available on our website. We have this video along with many others available on our website and our social media pages. And we also have our project coordinators as well.
Yep, like myself here in the office along with many others, we will be your point of contact here at GenStone if you have any questions ranging from how much GenStone do I need for my project, how do I even start, really any question you can think of, we'll be there to answer. Up next, I want to talk a little bit about dry fitting. So our brick panels have two different molds out of which they are cast. There's a 1 on this panel and a 2 on the corner of this panel. Really, you can mix it up and play around with what you like best together. As you can see, they're pretty darn similar, but you do want to make sure that you're mixing it up and personalizing your project as you go.
One of the most important steps and one of the first steps that you're going to do before your install is making sure that you have a level line. One of the most important tips that we have for you is not to level based on your floor or the ground, because sometimes even the slightest degree of variance can make your seams grow as they go up. So we recommend using either a chalk line or what we did here, we drew out this line with our level here. So we're going to level our panels off of this bottom black line. So what we're doing now is our dry fit. First, what we're gonna do is attach both of our corners here and here. Don't worry about getting them perfect this time. You'll be able to back any of the screws out if need be, and we'll show you that later when we get to it as well. Then we're gonna work our way in with the full panels and get a general idea of what cuts we're gonna need to make it fit for our specific wall. One thing I really wanna note is, as you can see here, there is a little bit of difference. This area is a little bit smoother versus the textured here. You want to make sure your screws only go in the smooth area because the next panel will lay over top and hide that next screw. So now we're going to put our panel over top of this corner here. In this case, what we needed to do, we had to back these screws out just a little bit to make this a little bit looser so we could get this panel to fit over. Once we got our panel to about here, we backed them all the way back in, and now it'll fit over perfect. All right, so as you can see here, we've got a good start to our dry fit. Now we know that we have about this much of an area that we're gonna need to fill in with this panel. What we're gonna do next is I'm gonna measure out that area, plan our cuts accordingly with this panel for how much we're gonna need to cut it down to fill in that gap. And then once we get to the actual install of the wall, we'll show you how we're gonna cut this panel to fill that in. So now we're gonna show you how to cut a panel to fit in this gap here. So remember, we're in the dry fitting stage, so this isn't actually attached to the wall quite yet. We've got some screws in the corners to hold them in place, and then we're holding up our panels to our level line with these shims here. What we're gonna do first is measure the gap between this panel and this panel to figure out how much we're gonna need to use to fill it in. All right, so here we're gonna cut this panel to fill in that little gap. So we went ahead and measured that out. It's a 6.5 inch gap. So what we need to do is get 6.5 inches from this panel. One of the most important things with the brick is you don't want to lose your finger edges. So you want to keep these in place. So we're going to cut it out from the middle and then piece these ones back together. First, I'm going to measure 3¼ inches on either side and then mark it. Another tip we have for you too is you want to take into account the width of your marker. So in this instance, I know when I measured that I'm going to need to cut just outside of the marker versus directly on it to get to that 3¼ inches that I need. See, this is our finished product now, so when we are going to go ahead and piece it together to fill in that gap.
Okay, so we're gonna start our install. We're gonna remove this product here and basically build from right to left, showing you how to use the caulking, the exact color match caulking, where to put your screws, all that good stuff, including filling this gap. All right, so we've got everything dry fit on the wall here. It looks like our cuts are good to go. We have not screwed or glued anything on quite yet, but now that we know that our cuts and our measuring worked, we're gonna get started on that.
So as we're getting started here on our actual install, another thing we wanted to point out again, because it's very important, the difference between an interior and an exterior install. For an interior project, all you're going to be using are drywall screws or Tapcon screws if you're going into concrete. For an exterior project, you'll be using a Loctite PL3X premium adhesive on the back of the panels. You want to go pretty heavy with the adhesive on the back, and we'll show you how to do that as well. And then you want to use screws accordingly as well. Tapcons again if you're going into concrete, non-corrosive decking screws if you're going into OSB or plywood. So remember, for exterior projects, you need to use an adhesive on the back of your panels when installing. The one that we recommend here is Loctite PL3X Premium. It's just safe for our materials. So you want to go ahead and just put it in a large S pattern on the back of each panel. We recommend using color match caulking on the sides of the brick panels. I am putting it on the back of the brick tabs as well as where the panels meet. We recommend you use enough caulking that it will squish through the panels, then wipe away the excess to blend the seam.
Something to keep in mind for our faux brick that is slightly different than our faux stone is where you're going to put the screws. So on the faux stone, you're going to run it along this top shiplap. That's not the case for the brick. You're going to want to drive your screws here into these smooth surfaces that will hide basically behind these fingers once you put the next panel on there.
All right, so with our little gap filling pieces that we have here, the ones that we cut out from the full panel, we did it a little different. We did end up using some face screws on these ones. What we did is we made sure to go underneath of a brick so it's hidden, and then at the end, when we're all completed with the install, we'll fill that in with the color match caulking. We also went pretty heavy with the color match caulking on this seam where it'll meet the next one. That way it's the mortar color that's come through here, this gray color, and then we wipe it off so it'll blend that seam together nicely. This is one of our cut pieces here. We're gonna go pretty heavy on the color match caulking while installing it, just to hide any seams that may happen when we attach the next piece. The first cut we showed you is the beginner level cut by splicing the two panels together. What we are about to show you is a more advanced cut. However, this cut will only need to be done once per row on your project and will eliminate the look of the seam that you get when you splice the panels together. Start by measuring the space between the panels and then add 3 inches. This is to account for the brick overhang on both sides. Using the measurement you got on step 1, start at the brick overhang on the left side, mark where the measurement ends on the back of the panel, then cut there. Mark 1 3/4 inches every other row of bricks starting at the second row. You are measuring 1 3/4 inches because this will account for the grout line and the brick overhang from the next panel. We are drawing out the mark we made in the previous step to help guide us through removing the brick. Remember, we are doing this on every other row to create the shiplap edge. Cut back every other row to the marked line, removing the grout and everything except the brick for your new overhang brick joints. This will create a staggered overhang like your original panel. You'll notice that we are using a keyhole saw at the moment. We will switch to an oscillating multi-tool for the majority of the cuts. We highly recommend using the multi-tool. It is far quicker and easier than the keyhole saw. If you don't have the multi-tool, you can typically purchase or rent one at your local hardware store. On the side that you are working with, you're now going to remove the 1.5 inches on the back of the brick tabs. Starting on the top row, you will then come in and mark 1 3/4 inches every other row. This measurement accounts for the grout line and the brick tab of the adjoining panel. You will be removing the top of this brick to complete your cuts for this panel. final step is to go in and paint the exposed cuts with the grout color.
Okay, right now I'm going to show you how to create your color match caulk. With your order, you've received this packet. In there, you'll have the actual caulk, a thickening agent, a syringe, and a cap. And then in this little box, you've got your paint colors. If I can get it open. We've got 3 of them that come with it. I already took one out because this is the one that we'll be using. It is the mortar match color, basically, the base color of our brick panels here. So I'm gonna pour it into this plate, get about 30 milliliters into here in the syringe, and then put it into the caulk, mix it up. I'll show you as I go here. So next step, I am gonna put the paint into the caulk here, shake it up for about a minute and a half. After it's completely mixed in, we're gonna add the thickening agent, shake it up again for about a minute and a half, and then actually let it rest for about a half an hour so it can settle. And now I'm going to add that thickening agent.
So this is the panel we were just working with and making that more advanced cut on. You'll notice here that we did go ahead and paint where the cuts were made, so it wasn't the color of the exposed raw material. What we're gonna do now when installing is we're gonna put the color match caulking in between the seams of the panels. The reason being is I'm gonna put it pretty heavy on this panel here and a little bit on the back of these ones just so it's continuous. And when these meet, I'm gonna put enough that the caulking is gonna seep through, and then we're gonna blend that in so it blends out that seam.
Up next, we're gonna start with the install of our ledgers here. You can see we've already got this one kind of set there just to see how it looks. This is what it looks like off the wall. What you want to keep in mind here is you're gonna want to lay a heavy bead of caulk around this corner just to tightly adhere it to the panels that are already on the wall. Another pro tip here is to drive your face screws rather than going through the brick. You probably want to stick with the grout lines in between. Number one, because that's a lot easier to hide the screws, and number two, you could just use your color match caulking to go ahead and cover that up. So right here on the ledger, we kind of have two options. Number one, we could use a full ledger and then basically cut out like, what, 2 of these bricks from another ledger to use here. What I actually think we're gonna do, just to make sure that we can keep things consistent, we're gonna cut off a couple of extra bricks here, bring in another ledger, just to make sure by the end of our wall, we don't have 2 strict seam cuts right there.
So now that we're coming to our end of the wall, we're gonna need to measure where we're gonna have to cut this ledger. In this case, it's gonna be pretty straightforward. We're just gonna measure and mark right here at the end of our wall. This would be the same idea if you were butting up into trim or something on this edge. So we're gonna measure, mark, and cut right there.
So here at the end of our ledger, as you can see, we've cut this edge off, exposing the internal material there. All I've done so far is put paint into this plate, and I'm just gonna paint the edge of that so that it avoids fading in the sun. And the reason I'm kind of dabbing it like that is so that I get a little bit of that stone texture that we're going for on the front of the brick there. You wanna keep that on the side here.
What I'm doing here is I'm going to use a sponge to help paint over where we made some cuts. The reason I'm choosing a sponge for this instance is because we chose the Chicago color, which has multiple colors in it. If you chose one of our other brick colors, like our classic or deep red, that is just the one color, you can use a solid paintbrush to conceal the seams. But with the Chicago, I'm going to sponge over with the red and the gray to really blend that out.
If you ordered with a project coordinator or through our website, you will have received a post-purchase guide in your email. In there, you will find a use and care guide as well as a warranty sign-up. And if you have any leftover material that is unused and like new, you can send that back to us. Just go ahead and reach out to returns@genstone.com.
Thanks so much for joining us. If you have any questions at all, feel free to call us at the number below.